Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're tuning in from. Welcome to episode 77 of the Scott Ritter Show. This week has been a tragic week for Russia. The ATACMS missile attack on Sevastopol, a beach, killing innocent civilians and wounded hundreds of others, and a terrorist attack or a series of terrorist attacks in Dagestan have, I guess, reminded everybody of the fact that violence has become a tool of people seeking social and political change through undemocratic means. Today, we're going to focus on what happened in Dagestan. Is the series of terrorist attacks a reflection of residual extremism that dates back to the difficult times of the 1990s? Or is it reflective of something new, perhaps interference by outside powers, intelligence services seeking to stir up trouble in the Northern Caucasus in hopes that they can drive a wedge between Russia's Muslim population and their Christian population, maybe even to disrupt the upcoming BRICS summit in Kazan in October? We don't know, but we're going to delve into this issue in more depth with somebody who might be able to provide some insight. Our guest today is Oleg Makarenko. He's a political scientist, an associate professor at the Department of Cultural Studies at the Moscow State Pedagogical University, and it's an honor and a privilege to have you join us here today. Oleg, let's start off. What is your take about what happened in Dagestan? Is it continued extremism dating back to the 1990s? Is it interference by foreign services trying to stir up trouble, or is it a combination of the two?
Hello, once again, I'm happy to see you. I'm very happy to meet you. I'm very happy to be useful to you covering the situation and developments in the Russian Federation as of today. It's a very difficult time, and the ATACMS missiles hitting the Crimea and the Dagestan Republic. What is the problem about? If we are talking about 1990s, you've mentioned. Also, intelligence. This is an attempt to take apart, or to break apart the USSR or the Russian Federation, to fragment it, and then to manage or rule the state in a very calm manner. That was also an attempt by special agencies or intelligence. The main method is the religion. Why? Since religion is a fanatical belief within Islam, for instance, let's remember Afghanistan. The USA used Mujahideens in Afghanistan fighting for independence and explaining that through religious beliefs towards infidels. Shuravis, who entered the territory of Afghanistan trying to give the Soviet order. It was not the case. The US used the religious organizations just to manage people, to rule people, and then to send them to wage war against the USSR. The same happened in the North Caucasus. The West doesn't want to have strong Russia. If they don't need to have strong Russia, they need to seek opportunities to make it weaker. I believe that one of the most vulnerable and seriously vulnerable spots is the religious beliefs. To use the radical and extreme Islam to wage religious fragmentation in the Russian Federation and religious hatred, this is the main task. Considering the fact that as of today, if you look at the moment, the Russian Federation, as of today, is quite successful at conducting the special military operation in Ukraine. Just settlements after settlements, village after village, liberated by the Russian forces. And Ukraine is a very difficult situation, which is voiced by many specialists, by many military specialists in the West. It means that if you cannot do anything in the battlefield, so you need to destabilize the situation domestically inside the country. So this destabilization might be held using religious beliefs or pseudo-religious beliefs, let's put it this way, just to destabilize the situation. Moreover, we need to understand that the intelligence services of Great Britain used religious factor very successfully. If we remember the assassination of Griboyedov, if we are talking about the political past. I gave an example of Afghanistan 1990s, the Russian Federation particularly. That has always been the case. In the US, in the current environment, is associated with the work of the special services, particularly considering your past. You need to understand that better than me.
No, I fully understand it. But, in Afghanistan, the United States took advantage of decades of, I guess, preparation, so to speak, undertaken by the Saudis, by people who practiced Wahhabism. And so in Afghanistan, there was a population that was inclined towards jihad. But my understanding of the North Caucasus is that the brand of Islam that is practiced in the majority is a takeoff of the Sunni faith, but Sufism. It's more mystical. It's not inclined towards violent jihad. It's actually a very peaceful form of Islam. Not that Islam isn't peaceful. I don't want to say that, but the to get the violence going, my understanding is that the United States sought to import Wahhabism, to import violent jihad into the North Caucasus. What is it about Dagestan that has allowed this to take place? Because it's clearly not the majority of the Dagestani population, but there are segments within Dagestan that have shown themselves to be susceptible to embracing a more violent form of Islamic expression. Is there something unique about Dagestan that lends itself to this?
The North Caucasus is very interesting. And the configuration of Islam, if we're talking about the Northern Caucasus, is very interesting. So if we're talking about the Northern Caucasus, we need to remember the longest war by the Russian Empire. It's called the Caucasian War. It took from 1817 till 1884. This long confrontation of the Caucasian peoples and the Russian Empire. That's the first thing. So there are some historical roots of this confrontation. This is the first point. And there are officials who still remember that, for example, Imam Shamil, who proclaimed jihad or gazvat against the Russian Empire, and the Russian forces from the Russian Empire sent there to include this territory as a part of the Russian Empire. Historical prerequisites existed before, and people remember that. Those peoples who are in the territory remember that quite well. This is the first point. This is one prerequisite. The second prerequisite, talking about Islam, in the Soviet time there was ideology, the Soviet ideology, which tried to wage out any religious beliefs. Religion wasn't considered as a necessary factor for the population. This Islam of Sufist nature, but not Sunnis. A lot of Sunnis. But in Saudi Arabia, we have Sunnis. In the North Caucasus, we have Sunnis. What brings them together? But we're talking about the Saudi Arabia. They are Salafites. But the representatives of the North Caucasus are Sufists. And talking about the Sufist Islam is absolutely right. It is a philosophical Islam. This is mystical Islam. This is just looking inside. As Mr. Kadyrov says, this is first and foremost the fight against your yourself. That's what the idea is about. When something is eroded, which happened in the USSR, so you do not understand. When it comes to your house, when it comes to your home, you don't understand that what you have, this type of religion, what the specifics are about. It is very complicated, and different organizations, including political organizations, political and religious organizations, try to impose their own interpretation of religion, including Islam. And that's where we have this radical approach, which is mostly associated, you were right to mention that, to Saudi Arabia, which says that there is a perception of religion not following the spirit, but close to the letter. If we read the Quran, everything is quite explicit. So this book is the basics and fundamentals of the current problem, which is the case in Dagestan, because you're shown Quran, you're shown the Surah and the holy book, and the people write on the churches some bad things which they burn, and synagogues which they burn, using some sunnahs. They are trying to follow the letter, and when they perceive the letter in the wrong way, there is no explanation, but this explanation should be the case based on something, but there is no fundamentals. And when within this, when something didn't exist and there was a vacuum and something appears, something emerges, special agencies and intelligence can use the feelings and emotions of believers. That's what the problem was about concerning Dagestan. So the religion of Dagestan and the religion of Chechnya, we understand it quite well. It is the possible highest level. They are highly religious people, and they perceive religion very carefully. That's why to play these religious feelings is easier compared with other regions. And since it is the easiest regions to use these religion feelings, that's why we see these external powers. Dagestan was chosen not by accident, and Dagestan, talking about Chechnya, this is a mononational republic. If we're talking about Dagestan, Dagestan has different peoples, Lizgins, Tabasarans, Chechen people, the representatives of the Jewish, the Russians. This is a multinational Russia in miniature, in a small picture. So if we're talking about this national composition, it is much easier to take something out of the context, one people, and to try to trigger confrontation against other people. This ideal platform for this type of activity.
Do you see this as something that is limited in scope to Dagestan, or do you think that this is part of a larger strategy to create a split between the Muslims of Russia and the Orthodox Christians of Russia, or the Jews of Russia, that whoever perpetrated this hopes could spread to Tatarstan, to Kazan, to Bashkortostan, to Ufa, to create a larger conflict between Islam and Orthodox Christianity? Do you see a grand strategy here, or is this more or less related solely to what is left over from the 90s?
No, this is a grand strategy. Why? If we look at Crocus City Hall, who was used? The Muslims were used. Didn't they voice what these young people voiced, these young terrorists who were killed in Durban city? Absolutely the same declarations. So just used by Ukraine, masterminded by the Western, British and American special for agencies and intelligence. And the second case in Durban. This is a system behind that, which we can track. If we just conduct a critical analysis of one activity, another activity, Islamic factor, And now the question is, why do they use this Islamic factor? Why do they need to do that? Just to destroy the society from inside. If the state is consolidated in its activities and its attempts, for instance, the representative of the Dagestan peoples, for example, Gajim Magomedov, he was the first hero of the Russian Federation who was killed during the special military operation, who sent his guys and states to protect them, and then he just exploded the Ukrainian soldiers, and the guys were protected and saved. Were they representative of the Dagestan people? No. So they were a lot of different nationalities, the Russians, even Ukrainian, the Tatar people, all the different peoples. And when all the peoples and representative of 11 heroes of the Russian Federation representing Dagestan are right now in the special military operation, 11 heroes of Russia, a lot of them, it says that inside the people, I'm talking about the Russian people, you know, I cannot say that we're all Russians. Inside the Russian people, you can cast a stone of a religious nature that would split us. But if we look at the Crocus Hall, they didn't succeed. They need to use another attempt. And I'm absolutely positive they will use another religious factor to have this religious hatred and fragmentation among Jewish, the Christians, Muslims. I'm absolutely positive about that. And these special agencies and intelligence will do that. So this is done to destroy the Russian society from inside if it cannot be destroyed from outside. And nobody has ever managed to do that in history.
You know, I had the honor and privilege of traveling through Russia in the past year, and I spent some time in Grozny. I actually had the honor of meeting Ramzan Kadyrov. I also spent some time in Kazan and met with officials and people there. And the one thing that struck me was how not just peaceful the relationship was between the Islamic population and the Christian population, but how natural it was, that there was no us versus them. Everybody viewed themselves as part of the Russian Federation. Someday I hope to visit Ufa in Bashkortostan to see the Bashkirs, and I hope to go to Dagestan and visit the same. But Dagestan stands out, especially amongst Americans. The Tsarnaev brothers were from Dagestan, and they were the perpetrators of the bombing of the Boston Marathon. And there's a feeling in America that maybe is ignorance-based, but that Dagestan is the wild, wild west of the North Caucasus, that it's a lawless land, that there's that there is, you know, active fighting between the Russians, the Orthodox Russians and such. Can you set us straight on this issue? Is Dagestan different than Tatarstan, Bashkortostan, than Chechnya, or is this just the West taking things out of context?
It is just taken out of the context. The Russian Federation and the legal framework of Russia is effective everywhere. So we have the same people everywhere. In Dagestan, the people are the same. You know, I grew up in the Caucasus, in Dagestan. My mother lives not far from Dagestan, several hundred kilometers from Dagestan. This is absolutely the same land, regardless of the nationalities, regardless of the religious and confession belongings. This is the one state. If we look at the history, Dagestan had Khazarski Khaganate, where Judaism was followed. So the people who lived there used to be Jewish, and then they started to become Muslims. So we don't have this problem. I'm going to give you another example. When the Islam became part of Russian history during the Ivan the Terrible, that's what they say. Ivan the Terrible did something bad, then for Islam to emerge in Russia and to be a part of the Russian state. We lived together with them for a long time, a very interesting way. During the Ivan the Terrible times, when he resigned, I'm going to give you history. And the responsible for the Russian throne was Semyon Beybulatovich. Who was Semyon Beybulatovich? Semyon Beybulatovich was the Khan. The question is, so how the throne could be under the responsibility of a Khan? Yes, that was true. That was the case. And when Ivan the Terrible came back, so that the throne was given back. It says about the trust and the privilege, and it's the trust and integrity of this person. We trust each other regardless of our religion. Either we can be Muslims or Christians. Dagestan is the same point. It is just the Russian Federation with the legal framework where you can be, when you can be met as a very honorable guest, like the same case in Chechnya. So hospitality, songs, culture, Lizginka. It's a great word, but Lezgins, these are the peoples of Afghanistan. This is a dance of the whole Northern Caucasus. How can we say that something is different there? It is different sometimes, that it is created artificially. That's what the problem is. It is created artificially. The weakest chain is broken where something can be done. It can be done. But if nobody does anything there will be no problems of religious or any other type of nature. So this emergence of radicalism in Islam will not be the case. They will get back to Sufism, Islam, Qadriya, Ahmadiyya. These are the areas of Islam that existed there back before in the past. If you look at the Chechnya, you visited Chechnya, the republic. This is sophistic Qadriya Islam, and in Dagestan it can be the same, unless it is artificially triggered from the outside. As of today, it's a very difficult period of time for the Russian Federation. It's a moment of fate for Russia. Everyone tries to do harm to Russia, like in the Crocus case and in Dagestan. Our American friends shouldn't be worried about that. If they come to Dagestan and to the Russian Federation, they will be in the circle of friends.
Since you brought this up, just a quick deviation. When I left Russia in last year in May in Istanbul, I met a gentleman from Dagestan, a very nice gentleman who took my daughter and I out to Istanbul. We ate, we talked, and he issued an invitation to come and visit him in Dagestan. And he's been calling me ever since, saying, "You have to come to Dagestan. You have to come to Dagestan." And my wife, who is from Georgia, has seen the violence, and she said, "You don't want to go to Dagestan now. It would be very dangerous." Would it be dangerous for me to visit Dagestan today, or would it be okay to travel there as a guest of a Dagestani gentleman?
Nothing bad. You will be met as the most privileged and honorable guest. The guest is the most valuable thing in Islam. A guest who crosses your home when you break the bread with this person is the most valuable person, like a relative. And when you just break the bread together with somebody in any house of Russia, you are the most privileged and honorable guest. Do not even worry about that. Even in Georgia, there were some times, and I visited Georgia. I visited not during the most peaceful time in Georgia. In Georgia, there were some problems, quite serious problems, with security and safety as well. That was the case. But in the Russian Federation, everything is quite okay with the security and safety. You shouldn't be worried about. Even it is better than in many countries of Europe. You shouldn't be worried about that. You will be the most privileged and honorable guest. Whoever comes to Dagestan will be this type of person. You can remember the football FIFA Cup, when the people arrived in Russia, were surprised at very delicious food and great perception and receiving. So inside Russia, there is no problem between the Muslims and Christians. We are even fighting together. It is one of the video clips near the church when the Christian guy prays and the Muslim is just protecting that guy who is praying. So this is brotherhood. It is shown in absolutely different situations, and it manifests itself from the outside. You shouldn't destroy our country. We will do it. We will do everything okay. Do not touch, and you'll be the most privileged and honorable guest anyway.
Well, I believe you. Like I said, I had the privilege of visiting Chechnya twice, and I never felt safer in my entire life. And when I went to Kazan, again, as you said, I broke bread with Christians and Muslims alike, and I never felt more welcomed. And I personally believe that would be the same in Dagestan. I just had to ask the question for the benefit of my wife, who, as all wives are, worry about their husbands. But to get to a serious thing, the United States today is causing tremendous trouble in the region. And we use ethnicities against ethnicities. We use religion against religion. We play Shia against Sunni, Christian against Muslim, Kurd against Turk, Arab against Kurd. And today in Syria, Russia is involved in supporting the Syrian government. And it's led to a very difficult situation in northern Syria, in Idlib, where Russia has faced off against Turkey. Russia supporting the Syrian government, the Turks supporting, frankly speaking, extremist jihadists, Islamic groups that are aligned with Al-Qaeda, etc. What is the role that Turkey plays in this? You mentioned the longest war between Russia and the Caucasian Muslims. And we know that many of those Muslims fled to Ottoman Turkey and took up residence in Ottoman Turkey. And today they are an integral part of the Turkish society. And they provide a linkage between the Northern Caucasus and the violence in Idlib. Is there a relationship? What role does Turkey play in being used by the West as a facilitator of Islamic violence in Russia today?
If we're talking about Russia, Turkey is used to a less extent. Just a simple example. If we're talking about the Sobor Mosque of Moscow, so that was built with the help of Turkey. Is it an intervention? Of course not. So Turkey plays its games in the North Caucasus. It has more linkage to Azerbaijan rather than the Northern Caucasus and North Caucasian republics of Russia. We're talking about the relations between Russia and Turkey. That's the pragmatic approach, absolutely pragmatic approach of interest, of national interest. The national interest of the Turkey in Syria, we do understand that. And the same interests are with Russia. We do support Bashar Assad. In Turkey, they have very, very different picture, the different attitude. They support those Turkish or pro-Turkish powers in Idlib, as you've mentioned. This is a problem, but the problem should be settled and resolved, not with a gun in your arms. It should be tackled and resolved through negotiations of the president of Russia and Mr. Erdogan. I don't think that so you believe that these guys who were in Makhachkala and Derbent, in Dagestan, for some time they stayed in Turkey and they were prepared there for some time. They were trained there, but we need to look at a different angle. Just recently, several weeks ago, Mr. Moore went to Turkey, for example, So very, very close relations between the intelligence of Great Britain and Turkey. But the Turkey is fighting against their own jihadists, and this is a matter of fact. After the terrorist attack in Krakow City Hall, Turkey helped the Russian special agencies and intelligence to disclose and track all the relations of these non-humans who created this hatred in Russia, who wanted to flee to Ukraine. Turkish intelligence helped and warned. So there is interaction. The problem of Turkey is not that they prepare someone. That's a big problem for them as well. If we remember the first head of the Turkish Republic, Atatürk. Atatürk said that Turkey should be a secular state, particularly secular state. And it is enshrined in the constitution of Turkey. That's why the support of the radical Islam in Turkey is connected, from my perspective, is connected with these special agencies and intelligence of the West who work in Turkey to do some activity in the Russian Federation. But the Turks and the Turkish state is against that. It also helps Russia as much as possible in neutralizing and trying to mitigate all the activities which might happen, negative activity which might be the case in Russia. So we have interaction in this case.
Thank you. Again, to bring up history, you mentioned Ataturk, the father of modern Turkish Republic, and the fact that he wanted to create a secular state. But Ataturk had a contemporary named Enver Pasha. And Enver Pasha had a lieutenant named Haji Sami Kushubashi, who was a Circassian from Abkhazia. And they were engaged in jihad, not only trying to return to power in Turkey, but more critically, they traveled to Central Asia and participated in the Basmachi revolt against Soviet authority, carried out jihad, and they were supported by the British in their efforts to bring down Soviet authority. The reason why I bring this up is that Vladimir Putin has just come back from trips to North Korea and Vietnam that raised a lot of attention. We know that his first state visit was to China. His second state visit after the election was to Belarus. But the third state visit was to Uzbekistan. This tells me that Central Asia is very important to the Russians. And we know, again, because of the Crocus City Hall, that Western intelligence services used Tajiks to attack, again, trying to, I believe, drive a wedge between Russia and the Central Asian republics. What happened in Dagestan? Do you see the Western intelligence services seeking to create similar friction in the Islamic republics of Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan? Do you see that kind of trouble? And is Russia going to be able to successfully prevent that from growing out of control?
Russia will be able to prevent everything which has been mentioned by you. Yes, Mr. Putin, the president of Russia, pays a lot of attention to the work with the representative of the Central Asian states. The migration policy, which gives a lot of money to Tajikistan, is not that stringent. It hasn't been tightened like the case of Saudi Arabia. So there was not something which was desired by many heads of the Western countries. For Russia to be very tough on their position to the Central Asian republics, trying to destroy their economic development. Russia is not doing that. Russia gives opportunities and tries to bring some order to this migration policy, step by step, but it is putting everything in order. So the interaction and relations on the mutually beneficial basis Central Asia is very important for us because we fought together in the war against fascism. Many Russians left for these Central Asian countries to go through the wars. The families of Tajiks, of Uzbeks, of Kyrgyz, of Turkmens saved Russian people from hunger, and they shared bread together. This is a matter of fact. But then was a historical stage over, and it turned out that the political elites separated us, but the political elites need to agree on something. For the Russian Federation, the Central Asia is and always will be that important part we need to talk to. Not to talk to, but we need to build right and good relationships. And the president of the Russian Federation doesn't only understand that, but he believes that it is one of his main political duty to do so, because existence together is our future. And Dagestan, when we're talking about Dagestan, yes, special intelligence services want to take these Islamic countries, the Central Asian countries are Islamic states. You remember Basmachis, Eldorak, but the British intelligence services tried to break the USSR with the help of Basmachi. So the British sent the Muslims there. Did they have any problems with Basmachi? No, there were no problems. They emerged when some people were sent from Turkey to destabilize the situation. They had special instructors, British instructors, British specialists. As a matter of fact, so the fragmentation's out. Our society is from the outside, historically has been from the outside. We do not do that because we need to live together. If it turns out that the land is not around, but the borders are the same, should we hold war against each other to somehow live together? Of course not. We need to live together without any wars. That's why the president of the Russian Federation sets a task, an objective, regardless of the confession or religion. We need to have good, strong relations with the Central Asian countries. Dagestan is a part of Russia, is a part of Russia. And we, Russian Special Intelligence Services and the Russian Federation and the local municipalities need to have the right policy, including religious policy, to prevent such terrorist attacks. Just look, young Dagestan guys serving in the police were to defend and protect the society from these bad people. Weren't they to do that? Mostly policemen died, but they are of Dagestan nationalities. That's why they are fighting for their independence against the radical Islam. So the answer is that the people died for this state. That's why the policy is in the right way.
Thank you for that. Look, again, just some observations. When I was in Grozny, they took me to several mosques, and I got to meet the imams and have very detailed conversations with them. But more importantly, I got to watch Christian Russians as they visited the mosques, and the respect that was shown to Islamic holy sites, and the welcoming that the Muslims had for the Christians, the mutual respect. And I saw this in Kazan as well. When I lived in the Soviet Union, I used to work as a U.S. inspector in the Soviet Union. In the late 1980s, early 1990s, I can say, while I never traveled to the Muslim lands, there was tension between Russians and non-Russians. They used some very bad words to describe Muslims and people. I never heard these words today. Today, I see something totally different. Is the relationship between Christians and Muslims today stronger because it is the Russian Federation? As you said, Dagestan is part of Russia than it would have been during the Soviet Union when they were separate republics treated separately and not as part of a unified whole. Is there a difference in the way that the Russian people view Muslims today that differentiates from that which was in the times when I was there. And I was there during the Afghanistan war too, so there was a lot of bitterness and anger about the conflict in Afghanistan. Is there a difference, or am I missing something? Is there still prejudice in Russia today towards Muslims?
No, no prejudices or biases. So they are not the case. We often ask a question: what's the difference? What's the difference? There is no difference between us in both religions. One religion makes other people's better and more stringent, and the other religion does the same. Of course, there are some radical manifestations, like in Dagestan. So you can still enjoy your religion. Can you see in Moscow a person who washes hands and who washes his face and who prays on a carpet? Can you see? Yes, you can see it in underground. You can see these they pray in front of shopping malls. No one prevents them from doing that. Nobody will say that. People just pass by because a person needs to do that. A person needs to talk to the God. He wants to talk to the God. For us, as of today, the problem of international hatred and the problem of interreligious dialogue doesn't even exist. So there are no problems. There is no ground for the problems. God is a God, Lord is a Lord. And when we are talking about God, we need to understand that it is absolutely the same. The Russian saying, oh, we just follow and listen to the God. It's a great word. Regardless of the name of the God, it doesn't matter. Whether it is Yahweh or Allah, it doesn't matter. For the Russian society, so these religious problems do not just exist. Of course, there might be some prejudices among some people. Someone has never faced, for example, has never been interreligious dialogue. People who live in just rural lands, but everybody has faced Muslims, and no problems exist. No problems at all. That's why the policy we have is. Minakhanov is close to the president. Kadyrov is close to the president of Russia, who says the Chechen people are the infantry of Putin. This is a matter of fact. So what's the difference? So we hold our weapons together. We are brothers in arms. There is no difference in by nationalities. You can express your religious feelings. You can speak to your God, but the bloc is single, and the God for the Russian person is our state. It's Russia.
Thank you for that. Thank you for your time. I have one last question for you that I'd like to talk about, and that is BRICS and the BRICS Forum that is going to be assembled in October, but not because of the economics of it, but again, about what we're talking about, religion. It's going to be held in the city of Kazan. Kazan is the capital of Tatarstan. It is an Islamic city. It's a Christian city. It's the perfect blend of Islam and Christian. BRICS is bringing in new members. And look where the members are coming from. Iran, an Islamic state. Saudi Arabia, an Islamic state. Egypt, an Islamic state. The United Arab Emirates, an Islamic state. And there are candidate states coming in also from Islamic nations around the world. BRICS represents the greatest threat to Western hegemony that one can possibly imagine, not just because of the economics, but because of the concept of peoples of different ethnicities, religions, faiths coming together and working collectively for the greater good. Do you see what happened in Dagestan as part of a larger strategy by the United States, by Great Britain, by the West, to disrupt the BRICS meeting in Kazan, to drive a wedge between Russia and the Islamic world?
If it had been an attempt, it's not just unsuccessful, it is stupid. That's not how disruption is effected. BRICS cannot be destroyed. It is increasing by leaps and bounds. So we see the summit BRICS is one of the Islamic centers of the Russian Federation, this Kazan city, to demonstrate that Russia is on the one hand Moscow, but on the other hand, it is Islamic center as well. So we are open, we are interreligious, we are more than religion, we are a single state. You could have seen that a mosque on the one hand and then the Orthodox Church on the other hand, and great relations. We say that the world as of today should go beyond religion. It is a single world. All the countries, Islamic states, will look at the relations inside Russia between Muslims and Christians. They will look at that. They know about that, but they will prove that to themselves once again that there is absolute openness and transparency. And on the other hand, and this is a spirit of dialogue within one political organizations, and opportunities of this coexistence are quite great within the state and within the system. Whether they wanted to do something, probably they wanted to do something. As one of the stone, another stone cast, the third stone cast, maybe then the big stone happens, but it's impossible. It's not enough. You cannot stop the wave. It's impossible. If the wave comes, it brings these stones away. So when you just see the road, the small piece of sand cannot prevent the sea going to the land. So you should remember Turkey, which will be a part of this BRICS summit. It will not be Erdogan, but it will be Fidan, the Minister of Foreign Affairs. They are thinking about entering BRICS. And this is a NATO country which wants not just to be present. It needs to understand whether it is economically feasible to be a part of BRICS, whether it is interesting for them. Therefore, this is the place for the Islamic State to understand which hospitability and which good relations they will see within this organization, which is the sea as of today.
Well, I want to thank you very much for this conversation. It's been a very informative, valuable conversation for me, and I believe for anybody who watched. I look forward to returning to Russia. Look forward to returning to Chechnya and visiting with my Chechen friends, returning to Kazan and visiting with my Tatar friends, visiting Ufa for the first time. But I think most of all, I look forward to visiting Dagestan, especially after you allowed me to convince my wife that it's a safe thing to do. But I want to thank you very much for coming on today, for talking with us, and for helping inform a Western audience about the reality of Islam in Russia today. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Professor in university, I want you to address to my students. That would be really great and interesting. I'm very happy to meet you. I will be happy to welcome you to Russia. It's a great privilege and honor for me. If I'm useful, I'm just at your disposal.
And I'm at your disposal too. Thank you. Thank you very much. It was an honor and a privilege. That was Oleg Makarenko, political scientist, associate professor of the Department of Cultural Studies at Moscow State Pedagogical University, and an expert on Islam and Russia today. In the West, we have prejudices. We view Russia one way. We are ignorant about the reality of Russia. One of the themes of this program is knowledge is power. And today, if you watched, you were empowered by knowledge, by the reality that Russia is not just a Christian nation, but it's a Muslim nation, and that Christians and Muslims live together in peace, and nothing the West will do can drive them apart. Thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you next week.